What's up guys, it's Drac, and I just got this in from Monkey Mods. This is the Colonel Wasp. Note, not the Captain Slug. There's a lot of different captains and colonels and goofballs in the hobby. But this is the Colonel Wasp 76. And don't let the aesthetics fool you. This is a Nerf blaster. It's a clear Nerf blaster, which means that you can see inside at all of the gears and bells and whistles and workings and cogs. And it's an AEG. Let's talk more about it. So let's start with an aesthetic overview of the blaster. We'll go from back to front. The back here is, of course, a buffer tube stock. This is a standard M4 style buffer tube stock. This is a stock that we put on that tube. We sell this over at Foam Pro Shop. And then inside, I've got some Elite Force lipos, just making sure that we get the voltage necessary to power this beast. And then we come over here, and the grip is, again, more mil-spec hardware. This is, I would say it's a pretty standard AR-15 or M4 grip, but if you look down the center, it's actually the airsoft knockoff version, and it's very thin, very pliable, but a very comfortable grip, time-tested for a long time now. Lots of options. Even if you have to do the airsoft screw port variation, this is theoretically modular. You could put any airsoft grip on there. Then coming through, we've got a trigger, pretty clicky, pretty responsive, single switch, single spring. Then you've got the bulk of the blaster, which if you're looking at this and you're like, that looks like an MP40. That's because it looks like an MP40. Now, being clear definitely helps the case, but especially with the magazine in it, it starts looking very MP40-esque, minus the stock. The stock kind of betrays. I don't know. There's some idiosyncrasies that we won't get into, but a single dedicated Talon magwell. This is not a Talon. More on that later as well. Then you've got the plunger, the system, the breech, and then about a 12-inch barrel that in my case is too long for the plastic that contains it. But that barrel is also on a spring system so that it can kind of chamber comfortably and has a little bit of shock absorption. The mag release is a very generic mag release. It's got a lever action there, and then it hits the Talon's joint inside. It's kind of cool. You've got some sort of ratcheting thing here that allows the pneumatics to be actuated from the outside, although I don't think that you can manually use this blaster just because of how much force is on it and also how it releases the catch in the back. So with all that said, let's move on to the performance aspects of the blaster. So the blaster itself, from a performance perspective, when shouldered, is kind of long and kind of thin for that shouldering. There's nowhere really to put this hand except for to grip it like this, or I suppose you could grip it like this. This feels very silly in this case. I'd want to be right here. Obviously, you can't grip it here because that's where your magazine is going to go. And to that end, the magazine feels like it's very far out in front of the blaster, but it kind of has to be to accommodate all of these internals. Now on the other side, you've got an interestingly kind of located safety. This is fire, this is safe, there's no indication. And if you look at my model closely, this is a review model, but the switch for my safety is broken. Now it's not broken completely, it's just the plastic case inside is shattered, and so you can see the switch working in real time, which is a little funky, and I don't know what's up with that QC. In addition to talking about the QC, now's as good a time as any to mention, you're gonna need an airsoft battery, and that battery is connected via a mini Tamiya connector, which is standard in airsoft, but very different than the XT60 standard that we use in Nerf, so just be aware of that. In addition, no XT60 connected battery that you would buy from like my web store or out of Dart's web store is going to be compatible with fitting into a buffer tube stock. You really need this super thin style individual cell battery thing to get in there. And then in my case, you actually have two disappointments in the back end of the blaster where my kit came with this and it fits on right. And if I apply pressure, it's not a big deal, but it also flops off like that and does all of this because the screw that attaches the stock to the blaster is not the correct length. So if you look in here, you can see that there's a screw port there. I can't screw through the screw port. And in addition to that, because of how cramped that hole space is, I actually can't fit the third pin in this hole. If you look at the blaster, you'll see that there's a pin holding it together here, as well as one holding it together up here. And while they're a little loose in the front, the middle one's pretty tough. I can't get the back one in at all. Now, luckily, there's a lot of screws in the blaster too, so it's holding together all right. But overall, a little janky. My switch is half shattered. My stock doesn't fit exactly right. And I'm still here to tell you that the concept is pretty cool. So when I fire this thing, and I'll go ahead and flip ye old switch into firing mode, I'll grab like this, I'll shoulder, holding the back end of the blaster together, and is it full auto? Yes, it is. And so it's pretty neat. There's a couple of other hiccups, right? So this is a real Talon magazine from Worker, and I say real in that case because Worker has created the Talon geometry, and that fits fine. Click in, click out. It's clear that whoever is manufacturing the Colonel Wasp here is trying to knock off Talon magazines. They don't want to buy their own, so they made this Talon, and then they must have figured out as they were putting my review model together that it didn't fit. So if you look really closely there, you can see that they've machined off about 10, 15 thou from the magazine's upper so that it fits now, but it's like, come on, you couldn't just use Talons or make them correctly? It's a little funny. So I don't know how much I trust this system implicitly right now because it seems like it's still very much in the kind of pseudo prototypey stage. Monkey Mod sent me this one for free to review. However, as I've said ad nauseum, this is my first responsibility is to you guys. I think that the system is cool. I actually really like the concept of AEGs being an alternative to flywheels in our stored energy category of competitive blasters, but I think that this one's a little bit jank. How jank is it, and is it worth solving some of those problems, finding the correct screw, or perhaps mechanically fastening your stock on, or abandoning the stock altogether and finding a way to mount your battery on the side? Is it worth finding a better barrel shroud that you give up some of that MP40 aesthetic? Let's find out. Let's take it outside. Let's put it over the chronograph. All right, so we're out here over our standard chronograph. We've got our Colonel Wasp 76. We've got the magazine loaded up. This is their magazine, but we've got it loaded up with the Target Max starts. Those tend to be about the best starts you can get, certainly off the shelf. But let's put a few over the chronograph, then we'll put a few down range. I jumped around in old B-Rad down in Australia's video on this, and he seems to think it's the most exciting AEG, that's the most accurate thing ever. I am open to the possibility. His was hitting about 220. Let's see what ours does. 183, 162, 55, 56, 71. Ricochet. Seems like mine's at about 180. I'm sure that there's a way that I could tune that up. It looks like the entire plunger system is reinforced with metal bars kind of holding it together, cinching it tight. So I'm sure you can get a little more power out of it, but we've got a target down here at about 40 feet. Let's just, we'll actually dial it in. We'll shoulder it. We'll put the sight on it and you know, in all honesty, that wasn't bad. We get less accuracy out of things that we have to prime and deal with follow-up shots. The glitter on this barrel looks really good in the sun. I didn't quite tell in the workshop under the studio lights, but pretty decent looking. And then being able to see the internals is definitely cool. Let's do some full auto and see what that does to our target. I want to say it was less accurate in full auto, but we still definitely got some darts on target and downrange. So this thing is going to set you back 150 bones, 150 USD plus whatever the shipping to you is. And now is a good time to kind of evaluate it along that merit. So for $150, what do you get out of your primary? You get 180 FPS, you get reasonably controlled full auto, you get a kind of funky ergo package where the grip and the stock both feel incredibly familiar, but the lack of any sort of hand guard or place to put your offhand is a little frustrating. 150 isn't bad for a competitive grade blaster, and this is coming in under the FPS that it would be acceptable as a stored energy blaster for a competition like Foam Pro Tour or 5v5 or something along that line. But I think that there are a couple of very notable QC issues that need to be addressed. If you're gonna pick this up, make sure that you message them and make sure that your stock is attached properly, because for me, this is pretty unacceptable. I'm willing to be kind because it was sent to me as a review model, but also I'm definitely going to be honest about how the stock is the most frustrating part for me. Why there's a collet on it that doesn't do anything, I have no idea. You'd think that there would be injection molded threads here so that this would be reversed and you would sink it, screw it, and then thread it on, and then it would be a very solid mechanical fastening, but mine isn't there yet. The magwell is pretty good, although their magazine is a little bit jank. I wish that my switch was intact and whole, and I wish that the barrel was a little bit more, like I would never play with this as is because this is an exposed metal barrel and it's just ripe for me to come out of cover and skewer somebody with it. So I think that it needs some work before I would be comfortable using it in either a competitive or a casual environment. However, if this is our first commercially available AEG like this, I think that it's a step in the right direction. It's definitely you know, well adapted from its airsoft origins into being a Nerf thing. I haven't had any overt jams. I haven't had any squibs. It seems like it's pretty good at chambering. This system seems pretty good in that regard. It's just, oh my, so frustrating over there. But my overall is that I think that it has a lot of potential, but I would definitely wait for the 2.0 before I paid $150 for it. That's just my honest take on it though. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Overall, pretty solid conversion from airsoft to Nerf, and really, really excited for the 2.0 with perhaps a more ergonomically sustainable package. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll throw a link down in the description box below. Of note, I am not affiliated with, no royalties, no nothing with Monkey Mods. That is just a blank link to their site so that you can check it out for yourself. Much love, blast on, Drac out.